Let me ask you this. When something meaningful happens in your life, do you feel an urge to share it immediately? Or do you feel perfectly fine keeping it to yourself? When you accomplish something important, do you think about posting it? Or does the moment already feel complete without an audience? Here's another question. Why do some people feel almost compelled to document their daily lives online, while others can live quietly, fully, without posting anything at all? Is it privacy? Is it confidence? Is it emotional distance? Or is there something deeper happening beneath the surface? Most people assume that those who don't post their life online are shy, antisocial, or disconnected. Some assume they're hiding something, others assume they're missing out on life itself. But psychology tells a very different story. In fact, if I had to bet, I'd say many people who don't post online aren't avoiding attention at all. They're not resisting social media. They're not trying to be different. They're not making a statement. They simply don't feel the need to turn their life into something visible. They don't measure experiences by reactions. They don't measure moments by engagement. And they don't feel pressure to perform who they are. So the real question isn't whether posting online is good or bad. It's this. What actually drives people who don't post their life online? Let's clear one thing up first. People who don't post their life online are not disconnected from reality. They're not unaware of social media, and they're not emotionally distant either. That assumption comes from how loud the online world has become, not from how these people actually live. You see, in most cases, they're simply internally oriented. Their sense of identity comes from internal experience, not from outside feedback. When something happens in their life, their first instinct isn't to share it. It's to feel it. They let moments register privately before deciding whether they even need to be expressed at all. Psychologically, this means they rely less on likes, comments, or online reactions to regulate how they feel. Their emotional grounding happens inside. They don't need external confirmation to understand whether something mattered to them. And honestly, that's becoming rare. Another important trait is low social signaling. Social media is built around signaling. Look where I am. Look what I achieved. Look who I'm with. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But people who don't post their life online often don't feel that pull. They don't feel the need to broadcast experiences in order to validate them. To them, a moment doesn't become meaningful because it was seen. It becomes meaningful because it was lived. The experience itself is enough. There's also something deeper happening here, something psychologists often describe as cognitive privacy. These individuals are more selective about what parts of their inner world they expose to others, not because they're hiding, not because they're secretive, but because they understand something most people don't stop to think about. Constant exposure fragments attention. When every moment is filtered through the question, should I post this? Part of the experience quietly disappears. Attention shifts outward. Presence weakens. So instead of dividing their focus between living and documenting, they keep it contained. They choose depth over visibility. There's also an emotional layer to this that people rarely talk about, and it has less to do with confidence and more to do with mental safety. People who don't post their life online are often sensitive to how constant visibility subtly changes behavior. Being seen, even passively, can introduce a quiet pressure to perform, to explain, or to justify moments that were never meant to be shared. Over time, that pressure becomes tiring. Staying quiet online removes that weight. It allows experiences to unfold without being shaped by how they might look, sound, or be interpreted later. Nothing needs to be framed. Nothing needs to be clarified. Life is allowed to stay unfinished, imperfect, and private, and that creates a sense of relief most people don't realize they're missing. Without an audience in the background, emotions settle more honestly. Reactions slow down. Comparison fades. What matters isn't how something appears, but how it feels. For many people, that internal calm is far more valuable than attention. They're not rejecting connection. They're protecting presence. They're choosing to live moments fully without turning them into something that needs to be consumed, evaluated, or understood by anyone else. Another common misunderstanding is that people who don't post online don't care about connection, but in reality, many of them care deeply. They just prefer connection that feels direct, intentional, and personal. They value conversations over comments, shared moments over shared posts. They don't confuse sharing with closeness, and they don't equate visibility with intimacy. And this part matters. Not posting online is rarely a reaction against social media. It's usually just a reflection of how someone naturally processes life. Quietly, internally, without needing constant confirmation from the outside world. They don't experience life as something that needs to be proven. They experience it as something that needs to be felt. What psychology keeps pointing back to is this quiet difference in how attention is used. People who don't post their life online often experience moments more fully, not because they're trying to be present, but because nothing is pulling them away. Their attention isn't split between living and documenting, between feeling something and thinking about how it might look later. There's no constant background noise asking, "Should I capture this?" And because of that, moments tend to settle deeper. They stay with what's happening just a little longer, and that changes how memories form. There's also something important about their relationship with solitude. These people usually have a higher tolerance for being alone, but not in a dramatic or withdrawn way. Silence doesn't immediately feel like loneliness to them. They can sit with their thoughts without needing to escape them right away, without reaching for stimulation just to fill space. That doesn't mean they don't enjoy people. It means their inner world feels familiar enough that it doesn't need constant distraction. And that comfort creates emotional stability. This is where many assumptions fall apart. People who don't post online are often seen as distant or detached, but in reality, many of them form fewer relationships precisely because they value depth more than frequency. They're selective, not avoidant. They let fewer people in, but when they do, the connection is usually intentional and grounded. Instead of sharing life with hundreds of people online, they share it with a small circle they genuinely trust. That's not withdrawal. That's discernment. There's also something revealing about how they see themselves. Many people who don't post their life online don't experience their identity as something that needs to be displayed. They don't feel pressure to perform who they are. Their life isn't a brand, and their experiences aren't content. Moments don't need an audience to feel real. They're allowed to exist quietly without proof, without being turned into something else. And none of this means one way of living is better than another. Posting online isn't wrong. Staying quiet isn't superior. They're simply different psychological orientations. Some people process life outwardly through expression and sharing. Others process it inwardly through reflection and presence. The real difference isn't confidence or insecurity. It's where meaning settles, on the outside or within. And none of this means one way of living is better than another. Some people share their life outwardly. Others live it inwardly. What matters isn't how visible a life looks. It's whether it feels real to the person living it. And if this way of moving through the world felt familiar to you, you don't need to explain it. You've been doing it quietly all along.